The console war is essentially over for many. And as the dust settles, albeit over the console war or the platform wars or whatever you want to call it, PlayStation has been crowned the de facto victor over Xbox. Now, the Xbox business since has been sliced and diced and repurposed into Windows gaming, with the only thing of any semblance of the old mannerisms being the platform business run by Sarah Bond. Now, many will try to say, no, it's an IP war and a subscription war now, or something silly like that. But to their dismay, that does not include Sony. You do battle with them when you come for their marketplace, which always was the main way they profited, via selling more third-party games than others in the industry. So what about said sunsetting console war? If it's over, is it time for gamers to let their guard down, right? Well, actually, no. As we'll soon discuss, there has been a bigger threat lurking in the shadows for gamers that needs our media attention now. What's up, people? It's your boy, MM2K of Hard Knock Digital Culture, Cloud Dosage, and MM2K Gaming, back again with another episode of The Quick Dose. This is where we talk about the latest and greatest in video game news, and man, oh man, oh man, do we have a good one for you today. Do us a huge favor before we get into this one, though. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and rock those bells for notifications, please. Okay, so a lot of things to unpack here. Let's do it. No further ado. Okay, so what is the actual story here? Well, now that the Xbox PlayStation platform console war is now to a head, Xbox is now doing its own thing. It's more trying to move on in the lines of Tencent, where they distribute games. They distribute games through many ways. They also have their own platform business, but the way they're approaching their platform business is not of the atypical console construct, which is what PlayStation is doing. So they kind of like Nintendo created their own lane, you know what I'm saying, that they're operating with. And now they're actually working with Sony and trying to distribute games through Sony. All right, which led us to see, and I think if the data that I saw was correct, in December, Xbox was the biggest publisher in the globe. However, 65% of those games were bought on PlayStation alone. So that was more than what was purchased on Xbox itself and the Juggernaut PC. Okay, so let that soak in. But on the heels of that competition dying down and those guys now actually working together to sell and distribute games, we're now hearing talks of the Juggernaut game, Grand Theft Auto 6, that keeps coming up. And there was a conference call with Take-Two not too long ago where they mentioned that GTA6 is still slated to come out in 2025. So a lot of people were like still on standby. They're like, hold on now, we're used to Rockstar like delaying this game, you know, as it gets closer and closer, and we're getting closer and closer. And no, Strauss Zelnick and company, they're like, no, we're still on pace for 2025. And that kind of has the video game world at a standstill at large. That's a whole nother problem that we're going to talk about with Cold Blood, the co-host here on this channel. So if you're watching this video as part of the podcast, you just sit tight and stay tuned, because we'll be discussing that, you know, the effects of Grand Theft Auto coming to 2025 and the ripple effects on the games industry. But there's something else happening with GTA 6 that we get to explore now in more detail since the console wars have died down. They are spearheading this movement with market analysts where they're like, yeah, maybe GTA 6 should do another price hike. Now, we've reported on this before, but now they're bringing, the analysts are not letting up on this. And when we reported this before, we even sit here on this channel, look, man, it's something that we don't want to give oxygen to, because if we give oxygen to it, then it gets life. And the analyst says, they're like, we don't care. This is something that we need Rockstar to do. Now, why would they want them to do that? There's a multitude of reasons. Game sales are considered sluggish. Now we'll get into why they are considered sluggish, if they should be considered sluggish. Was the industry just stupid in believing that during COVID that the sales that we were seeing and the activity we were seeing with games, if that was proper, they should have thought that was going to be sustained, whatever. We'll get into that in a little bit. But nonetheless, whenever you go up, the market always wants you to keep going up. They don't sit there and say, oh, this is the reason why you went up and you went down. It's okay. The market never reacts like that. You are always when you're traded on the market, when you're a publicly traded company, I tell you guys all the time, your two biggest competitors are, number one, the other people in your business sector, but number two, it's yourself. Because you're always being compared to yourself. What did you do last year? Are you doing better this year than what you did last year? And even if you're doing better than what you did last year, are you doing good enough? You know what I'm saying? So really, we should put you number one. You are your biggest enemy, number one. And number two, it's the rest of the industry. So the market is doing what the market does. And they're like, we've seen all this activity in the past. You guys are not growing. Other industries are growing. This is a problem. We know you had a price hike. You need to go up again. And they're looking at GTA6 to do this. When you take this in consideration, and then you look at other things that are happening, globally, chip prices and hardware prices have not subside yet, or come down off their peak all the way. And then we got this whole, which I'm not going to get into the politics of it here, but we got this whole proposed tariff war that's looming too. That's definitely going to raise prices on gaming. Like you had ESA and a multitude of other companies urge governments to like back off of this because this is going to be bad for the gaming industry. And then that leads you to say, there's a lot of doom and gloom coming down the horizon. Yeah, this is a perfect time now for us to stop howling at the moon and pay attention to everything that's happening on Earth. And the moon represents the console war, which, for all intents and purposes, has been over for a while. All right. So being that this is the case, what can we do to try to help alleviate this issue and try to steer the market in the right place? Well, first we got to examine what the thought process is by the industry and why it was stupid. Like, first and foremost, it was just dumb to think that the pandemic, people being forced to stay at home, was going to maintain itself. It would be like the commodities industry, which is responsible for electricity, water, and gas, to sit there and say, you know what? We made record money during the pandemic because everybody was at home. And they were using water, electricity, and gas like crazy because they were at home. Yeah, we're going to expect this to keep happening. We're going to expect this to keep coming up. Even when people return back to work, even when we're going to expect this to keep going up. That would be insane. Right? And I understand how the industry works, where you got to keep going up, but it's like businesses and markets that are dealing with like the Olympics or, stuff like that, like economies and stuff like that are dealing with the Olympics. When the Olympics come to your city, your borough, your town, your village, whatever, of course you're going to expect the economics of things to go up temporarily. But the market and the industry should be able to regulate itself for a downturn. No, people hired like this was going to keep going up. Like people were going to stay inside and never go back outside again. That was absurd. I get it was a pandemic. I get that it was horrible in so many ways and gruesome, as far as the lives lost and all that stuff. But it wasn't a nuclear drop. The air quality was still eventually was going to be good again and people could go back outside. Huh? Like it's insane. And the insanity of the industry. They overhired and then had to do this gut-wrenching layoffs and all this consolidation and all this other stuff with ABK and Embracer Group. I mean, it's going to affect the game industry forever. You're, like I said, you had so many synergies, so much cannibalization that happened in the market. There are people that are never going to be able to come back into gaming again because positions have just been dissolved. They're going to have to find something else to do because they got student loans to pay. So the industry just did something. They did its own irreparable harm to itself, which was dumb. And unfortunately, we as consumers got to deal with the aftermath of it with analysts trying to get people to persuade Rockstar to make GTA6 $1,000, right? But also something else, some other data I was looking at, where people are actually saying that the $70 price hike, and there's data out there that can coincide just a little bit, and I can speak to this personally. The $70 price hike that happened this year, or this generation, is also leading to some consumer angst. Like, consumers are buying less, even though, once we've dealt with the layoffs in the industry and the industry is starting to normalize itself. And you're starting to see some growth. Like, I think we saw like 2.8% growth from 2023 to 2024, which was a lot better than 2022 to 2023, which was only 0.8%, right? So you're starting to see some normalization happening. Still, that's in regards to money. And of course, with the price hike, because things are costing more, and then the cost of hardware and stuff like that, because of the chip shortage and everything, and things are just costing more. Of course, you're going to see more money, but are you seeing more sales? And data is suggesting not necessarily. We're not necessarily seeing more sales. We're seeing lesser sales, but because of expanded prices, it's ending up to more money. Why are we seeing less sales in a lot of areas with a lot of titles and hardware stuff like that? Because I think that gamers are looking at this $70 price tag and they're like, I don't see a $10 upgrade in what I've gotten. Like, I think a lot of people this generation feel like, even though we're getting more 60 frames per second games, a lot of gamers don't care about that still to that degree. And they're like, okay, so this is 60 frames per second. This just looks like a prettier version of my PlayStation 4 game. And that's why I think you're seeing a slower conversion from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5 than Sony probably anticipated. Yeah, I think gamers overall don't see the enhancements that they were expecting from a cross-generational leap, even if games remained at 60 for one. So you don't see the leap, and it's it's just by the bounds of the technology. Like, I feel like AI and machine learning will improve that headroom a lot, but you don't see, in the raw power of the hardware, you don't see the generational leaps that you're used to seeing, and you got to pay an additional $10. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you. I have become more selective in buying games. Like, if the game was popular, I would buy it. A lot of times, even if I didn't get around to it or not, I would still buy it. Not so much now. There are a lot of games that are popular that I did not buy because I'm like, nah, I seriously doubt I'm going to give that one a try anytime soon. Like, there are examples of where I'm actually sitting around waiting for sales. You know what I'm saying? And I don't do that. I don't do that. And a lot of it has to do with the $70 price. I'm going to be honest with you. Now, some of you may look at me or hear me say that and say, MM2K, you're just a cheapskate and you're broke or whatever the case may be. All right. Well, I hate to inform you that most gamers are more like me than they are like you then. Like the average gamer only buys 2 games a year. They might have 8 or 9 in their catalog. Now, I don't go that low, but their spending habits and what they curb as far as what they're willing to spend is more relative to me than to you. You may buy more stuff per capita, but there are a lot less more of you than there are of them. And they're a little bit closer to me than they are to you. So whatever your opinions are, whatever your labels are, they don't matter because they don't change the reality of the situation. All right. So after spreading all that doom and gloom and calling people stupid or whatever, and then all resting this in the laurels of GTA 6, what is the solution here? Well, first and foremost, the solution is you as the consumer telling Rockstar, you better not make GTA 6 $100. You better not make GTA 6 anything over $70. Now, if you want to have DLC or whatever, fine. And you bet not even try to break up the online mode from the single player mode to in an arbitrary fashion, get $100. Make the game 70. Because you're going to make it all up in DLC and stuff like that anyway. So don't give the analysts what they want. That's not your job. Your job is just, from an analytical point, make sure that your company is making money. You're going to make hand over fist with GTA 6 and you'll never look back. All right. So that's what you need to do as consumers. You need to send that message to Rockstar. You need to start sending it to them immediately. You better start resoundingly say, you better not make this thing over $70. Secondly, when it comes to other games, all right? When it comes to other games, the industry, like we saw something where Dragon Age Veilguard failed. And I know there was some political hoopla behind that. But I think the game failed because even the people that did like it was like, look, man, it had its ups and downs. It started off slow. It went up, felt like a great experience for a while, and then it plummeted back down. It was a real pacing issue, and they went too far off the grain. The EA president or CEO tried to blame it on it not being a games as a service title. No, we can't do this. Another thing we can't do is just lean on games as a service. I get why they're doing it. I understand the realities of it. When you look at the top played games anywhere, they are games as a service. Maybe not Switch, but the top played and top money earning games anywhere are titles of, games as a service titles, monetization type titles. So I get the lore, but what you have to understand is that the overwhelming majority of titles that are sold are not games as a service. The top games are games as a service, but the overwhelming majority of money to be made overall in the industry are not games as a service. But if you want to avoid what happened with games that I really am sad to see not come to fruition, games like this was the Ex-Mass director's new sci-fi game canceled. Studio shut. This was the game by Casey Hudson. It was Humanoid Origin Studio shut down. I was really looking forward to this game. It shut down because, amidst this slowing era within gaming sales, they lost their financial backing. I think what you're going to have to do, game makers, and I hate to say this, but it's not a horrible thing. I think what you're going to have to do to secure your financial backing is have definitely a full-fledged, 70 hour, 100 hour, 30 hour, whatever it is, single player narrative game, but you're going to have like a games as a service component as well. You know what I mean? I think a perfect example is Mass Effect 3. I don't like the reasons on why they did it, because it was EA being greedy and forcing BioWare's hand to where they were like, look, we don't want people buying used copies of our games. So what you need to do is you need to force them to either buy a new copy or pay this $10 uptick charge if they buy a used copy. And in order for you to do that, you're going to have to tether the single player experience to the multiplayer experience. I'm not saying go that far, but what you should do is have your single player experience, and then right with that or right behind that, you tether an online experience. And the Mass Effect 3 single player experience and the online experience was phenomenal. Look at that as an example of what you should do. I think Casey Hudson should have realized that as well. In this current climate, you got to have like a games as a service element for reoccurring revenue in order to get outside funding. So you either do that, or gamers and developers. Here's an initiative that I've been talking about forever. Nobody pays attention to it, but now that we're on the cusp of them trying to create another price hike, a ridiculous one to anywhere to upwards of $100, right? Here's what we need to do. We have to take the power out of the publisher's hands and start a situation where, look, like perfect example, Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 did it in an excellent fashion. They partnered with some platforms, PC or Steam and even Stadia, because Stadia had money that they was throwing around at the beginning of its platform for exclusivity for its, you know what I'm saying? What do you call it? It's early access. That's cool. So you have like a PC early access, you know, if you're going to do something exclusive like that, or you can have your early access everywhere. But I think that these big AAA, big ticket games, you're going to live and survive off of early access. There's a lot of us gamers that would love to try out your game, be on the beginning throes of an up and coming game. Like if Casey Hudson said, look, late 2025, we're opening early access. This is very rough beta, but we're opening early access to this new up and coming game. Oh my goodness. Are you serious? Do you know how many people would jump on that? And then you start using that as your funding to start developing, building the game. And that way you don't have to go to no big conglomerate publisher. You don't need to go to some big crazy angel investors. Like, you know, you don't need to rely on them as much, because you are still going to have to get some outside investment, but it's not going to cripple your project, as we saw with Humanoid Origin Studios. You got the gamers that are willing to come in, fund a huge portion of this, if not most of this, right? And that keeps the dream alive. And then they give you valuable insight on how to come out with a fantastic retail product like Larian Studios got. Larian Studios got invaluable consumer feedback for about 2 or 3 years. Then they went retail, and then they sold a game that is one of the biggest modern franchises or modern games of the last few generations. Like, come on now, right? One of the most awarded and purchased games of this generation. You can do it. Larian showed you, they made you the blueprint. Now, whether the game comes out as good as theirs, you know, it's all about talent, but at least you have a blueprint and structure to follow for funding. All right. There's got to be some significant changes. The changes aren't perfect, but it's better than just sitting tight and saying, oh, well, you know, and just twinkling your nose and clicking your heels and expecting and hoping for a different outcome. Because the way the trajectory of things are going, something's going to go bad here. Here's my closing. AAA gaming is under threat. When people were saying, oh, AAA or exclusives were bad and exclusives are going the way to Dota Bird. No. These platform holders are fine. They're in a more secure area. It's not perfect over there, but they're in a more secure location or a secure situation than these third-party developers. But when you look outside of these platform holders, like a PlayStation or Nintendo, AAA gaming from third-party developers is under threat. Greedy market watchers are hoping to spearhead a first. That is multiple price hikes in the general cost of games within a single generation. Now, evidence shows that enough gamers don't feel that this original price hike was warranted in the products, in being shown in the products that we're seeing. Hence why there is data that suggests that there are less sales in areas. That said, if the market dwellers get their way, you're going to see two very negative things. Game types will be oversaturated with pure games as a service games. I don't know about you. I don't want to see Concords attempted every 5 minutes. And two, they'll be pricey. That's why there's no better time than now to let the market know. Not on our watch. But you better speak now or forever hold your cash. But that's it. That's it from your boy. Let us know what you think about all this in the comment section below. Like I always say, who cares what I think? But if you did like what I have to say, check out the links below to follow me. They will lead you to, again, Hard Knock Digital Culture, MM2K Gaming, Cloud Dosage. With that said, peace. Have a wonderful gaming day.